am the CEO and co-founder of Syntonic. We provide a monetization platform to mobile carriers to enable new revenue streams from content services. For example, zero-rated data, sponsored data, ad-supported data, content subscription plans, as example. I want to thank everyone for attending today and to hearing from this great panel of distinguished experts in this field. I want to just spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes providing some background and framing for today's conversation. As Rima mentioned, we were here last year, and we hosted a panel discussion called Beyond the Data Plan. And basically, I was discussing the necessity and urgency for mobile carriers to transform themselves from network operators to content service providers. The thesis was, and still is, that voice, data, and text are commodities, and the only way of differentiating a commodity is price. And as a result, carriers are in this death spiral, seeing their ARPUs declining, unless they change who they are and what they are and try to participate in the $2.5 billion app economy that their investments partially created. I think it's quite illuminating, actually, to take a look at the economics behind what's going on in mobile today. This top graph, I present two things here. One is carrier ARPU in the United States, and that's in yellow. And you'll see pretty much starting from 2013, there's been a steady decline in carrier ARPU in the United States, while there's been a saturation that's been reached in terms of the number of subscribers. Again, this is the United States. However, you'll notice that this curve is actually replicated pretty much around the world, certainly in developed economies, but you're also seeing sort of this decline because voice, data, and text are commodities in emerging markets. This next graph really shows where the value has been created over the last decade in mobile. So what's fascinating about this is orange represents the global revenue generated by voice, data, and text by mobile carriers. And then in the brown, you see the total revenue generated by mobile services. And this is mobile commerce, this is mobile advertising, this is in-app purchase. You will notice in 2016, the lines crossed, meaning that the total carrier revenue was roughly the same as the mobile services revenue. But what has happened since is the carrier revenue has flatlined, some modest, minimal growth. But what has really happened is the game is being played in the app economy, in the mobile services. In 2021, we're looking at almost 5 times more revenue, more value being created by mobile services than the traditional voice, data, and text by the mobile carriers. The takeaway from this is the carrier can continue doing the same thing and invest their $170 billion a year in CapEx infrastructure and monetize that in terms of voice, data, and text, or they can try to claw back some of the value that it has accreted into the mobile services space. And that's really where the game is being played today. What you're going to hear today is a discussion around what's happening in this mobile economy to try to capture sort of these content services revenues that basically the Googles and Facebooks and the Netflix and Amazons have assumed. So when I was here last year, we talked about 2017 as the year where carriers are starting to experiment into the space of new content services. But really what has, I think, surprised us all is just how global this experimentation has done. Basically, almost every carrier in the United States, every carrier around the world has been participating in some type of content type services. Just to name drop a little bit, certainly Vion in Europe with their Be Free sponsored services, Indosat in Indonesia, they have the apps that never run out type service. Love their marketing around that. Vodafone Pass which is this new unlimited content pass to music and video and chat, has happened in Europe and beyond. Certainly in the United States, we've seen the Binge On service with T-Mobile with unlimited video services and now added Netflix service on top of that. In South America, we've seen Vivo have over 50 sponsored data campaigns last year, Claro bundling content in their offerings. Africa, also, things are taking off around this. We've seen Vodacom's goal-free service around soccer. So really, there's been an explosion of real exploration in this space that I don't think any of us really could have foreseen. And I think that's great. And we'll talk a little bit about 2018 shortly. However, not everything is as rosy as it might appear. It turns out enabling some of these services have been quite challenging for mobile carriers. And so there's been, to some extent, some perhaps misguided promotion and advertising around this. One of the problems is that there's been some data leakage associated with a lot of these offerings. So much so that it's really impacting consumers' data plans because they're thinking that they got a free pass or sponsored access, or they paid for some sort of content plan. And this has caused some grief in the community. However, fortunately, there are some technologies out there, and the space is evolving to solve some of the issues. And obviously, Syntonic has a solution that does address these. So I think there's a lot of optimism. I think you're going to see a lot of refinement in terms of business models and business scenarios in this space. And you might say, well, isn't 5G going to come in and that's going to save the day for the mobile carriers and they don't need to worry about content services? I think there's general consensus in the community. 5G is out there a little bit. It's not going to happen here and now, and that the life shelf for 4G services and infrastructure are going to be around for a little while longer, at least to 2020. And so carriers are going to want to invest in this to grow the opportunity, as opposed to seeing their investments kind of accrete to others. So let's see. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Susan and move forward with our panel discussion today.